Hey guys, Nathan here with Team EXT. This is going to be a new video series that we wanted to start. The gist of the series is just going to be kind of going over some sort of misconceptions that a lot of players might have, and we're just trying to kind of help the community improve with their playing ability. So the first thing that we wanted to address was the mulligan. So this is going to be a first video in a series, like I mentioned. We're going to do other videos, but the next video isn't going to come out until we hit certain targets that we're trying to meet. So at the moment, we're usually getting around 10 likes on each video. The next video in the series isn't going to come out until either we get 50 likes on this video, which I know seems like a big jump, but I'm sure we can do it, or we get an additional 20 subscribers. So at the time of filming, we were at 150 subscribers. So as soon as we hit 170 subscribers or get 50 likes on this video, what we're going to do is we're going to do the next video in the series. I think it's really a good idea for you to subscribe at the minute because we're going to do a giveaway soon, I think. We're just trying to get final confirmation on that. We're going to do some sort of channel giveaway. We've just launched our Facebook and Instagram profiles as well. So now is a really good time to get involved with the team on social media if you're not already. So without further ado, let's take it away. So this video is just going to be 5 things that we've noticed players doing while mulliganing, which is a little bit questionable on occasion. So let's start it off. So number 5, not looking at what your opponent's playing. So this video, I am trying to make it as generic as possible. So I'm not trying to talk about the current meta or past metas or anything like that. What I'm trying to do is just make it so the video ages well. So it's something where in a year's time, 2 years' time, you can look back at this video and it's still going to help you with the mulliganing. So you can kind of break down Dragon Ball decks, like most other decks, into a couple of different categories. So there's more controlling, aggro, mid-range, combo-orientated decks. Depending on what your opponent's actually playing, would depend on what you keep or don't keep on the mulligan. So by that I mean, if you look across at your opponent and they're playing an aggro deck, why would you ever keep cards in your hand that's not going to help you in the early game against the aggro deck? Or something that's going to help you recover after the early onslaught, which usually comes with aggro decks. In a similar fashion, why would you kind of not keep cards that's going to be a late game kind of windmill slam win the game against a deck that will not put any pressure on you until turn 4 or 5? It's something where it's going to be a game-winning card later in the game. That's something where you'd probably want to keep it. So I've seen it a couple of times, and I know the rest of the team have as well, because we've discussed this, where if you're sat playing an aggro deck, for example, players will still keep late game cards against you. It's just something where it's so simple, and it's really going to help you a lot if you look at what your opponent's playing and you can predict what their deck is going to be based purely on their leader, and that's going to help you with the mulligan. So it's really important just to pay attention to the meta, your local meta, and what the deck is and what the deck is capable of. So try to bear that in mind when you go into an event. Number 4 is keeping silver bullets. So Bandai have shown that what they're going to do is a mixture of printing silver bullet cards and some sort of ban list at this moment in time. Like I said, I want this video to age well, so don't quote me on it if the game has changed slightly. But at this moment in time, they do print silver bullets and they do have some sort of rotation system, some sort of ban system. Against decks that have a silver bullet, if you have it in the main deck or perhaps you went into game 2 or 3 and you've sided into the silver bullets, it's usually a good idea to keep them. By keeping them, it gives you a higher chance of actually being able to use it. Some silver bullets don't come out till turn 6, some come out turn 1, some come out turn 3. So, kind of linking in with what I said previously, you need to look at what your opponent's playing. If they're playing an aggro leader and your silver bullet doesn't come out till turn 6, I'm really questioning what you're doing, kind of more from a deck building perspective rather than the Mulligan perspective. It's something where the example I've got is the Foo. That's a silver bullet against Janemba in most cases, but that's because against Janemba, as long as you're not drawing a lot of cards, you can usually get to turn 6 in order to drop the Foo. However, another example is we've got Cronoa on the screen. This will come down on turn 1 and it'll be effective for the rest of the game. So against a leader that uses a Shigesh, for an example, it's probably a good idea to get it out as soon as possible, maybe perhaps turn 2 or 3 at the latest, depending on the leader your opponent's using, and prevent them from being able to use the Shigesh to the full extent. But yeah, definitely keeping your silver bullets and knowing when to keep your silver bullets is really important. It links really well to this next point that I'm going to come up to, which is number 3, which is hard mulliganing for answers. So, kind of linking back to the silver bullets, that's something perfect that you want to hard mulligan for. It's something where you know you've got a bad matchup, or it's a card that will blow out your opponent. If you've got 6 cards in hand, you don't have any of the answers, but you've got maybe 1 or 2 good cards that you'd usually keep, it's usually a good idea to actually just hard mulligan all 6 cards back, searching for the answer to your problem. So, for example, I've got an M2 on the screen. That could be a solid answer for the GIT GUD matchup. You might be playing 2 of them. You don't actually have it in your hand. It's perhaps a good idea to get rid of your entire hand and try searching out the M2. Another answer we've got is the Flying Nimbus. It's a solid answer to a lot of go wide decks and the like, but just kind of bearing in mind that if you've got a card that's a blowout against your opponent, if you don't have it, hard mulligan for it. Not just thinking trying to stop your opponent from playing, but another good way to think about the hard mulliganing is if it's something that you need in your hand in order to actually play. So if you've got combo pieces that you definitely need in order for your deck to work, and you didn't draw one, even though it was a 4 of, perhaps it's a good idea to kind of hard mulligan for those cards if it's so necessary for your deck. So I'm thinking cards where they're just so intrinsic, perhaps your deck's even named after them, is something that you want to hard mulligan for, just to make sure that your deck can actually work to its fullest potential. But yeah, moving on to number 2. This is probably one of the biggest ones. So not thinking ahead. So when I play, I know quite a few players don't do this, but depending on my hand, or kind of the first option of the mulligan, so the first time you draw your 6 cards, depending on what I see, I usually plan ahead. So I kind of plan 2, 3, sometimes even 4 turns ahead about what this hand is capable of doing. And depending on what I draw, my plans can change, obviously. But I see a lot of players where they just see 4 or 5 good cards. They just keep the 4 or 5 good cards, but they're not planning what they're going to do with the cards. It's something where they've just gone, oh, these are really good cards, I'm going to keep them. there's no forethought. There's nothing where they're kind of saying to themselves, oh, I'm going to keep it for a turn 1, drop this card, turn 2, perhaps drop this card and this card, play around this card, and then turn 3, I'm going to be able to make a big push with this card. It's not that kind of thinking ahead that a lot of players do. What they're tending to do is just go, oh, pretty cards, I'm going to keep this, it's going to be good, but they're not seeing kind of how it will play out in their mind's eye. And that's something that I see a lot of players doing, where they're not planning ahead. This isn't even just applied to the mulligan. It could be you turn 2 or 3 in a game, you're just trying to play out this next turn. I tend to think, how am I going to play out this turn, the following turn, and perhaps even the following turn after that? It does depend on each game, obviously, but planning ahead, thinking ahead, it's something that I don't see a lot of players doing. And it's a really simple way to improve in the game. Just having some sort of forethought and understanding what is possible for you to do, what is possible for your opponent to do, and kind of thinking about the most likely situation and how you can win in those circumstances, or sometimes even not lose in those circumstances. But planning ahead, understanding the capabilities of yourself, your opponent, their deck, your deck, is something that you need to be thinking about from the mulligan and taking forwards into the games. And then the final point, thinking about percentages. So again, this is something that I do a lot that I don't think a lot of players do, where I'm quite mathematical with the way I think about cards and possibilities, like likely, unlikely, possible. Without going into too much detail on the actual math behind playing out the cards, while mulliganing, before you draw any cards, so you've got a deck of 50 cards, each card is 2%. So each card is a 2% of your deck, because there's 50 cards, each card is 2% of the deck. So if you're on the mulligan, you've decided to keep 4 cards. You've shuffled back 2. The possibility of you drawing a one-off from that point is, I know it's not exactly, but around 2%. Let's call it 2% just because it makes it easier. So you've got a 2% chance of, let's say actually you've mulliganed back 1 card, you've got 5 cards in hand. You've got a 2% chance of drawing a one-off that you need. You've got a 4% of drawing a 2-of, 6% of drawing a 3-of, and an 8% of drawing a 4-of. When you're deciding to mulligan, when you're deciding to put that card back, if that card is playable, if it's something that you're happy to keep, you kind of need to do a comparison in your head, because there's only a 2% chance of you drawing that one-off. Is it worth mulliganing a decent card for a 2% chance of drawing the perfect card? And that's something where you need to weigh up the risk of actually doing that mulligan. And I find the best way to weigh up risk is by playing the percentages. Because if you're playing the percentages, more often than not, it should work out for you, because just over a period of 1,000 games, that 2% chance of you drawing that one-off card should even out to be about right. Perhaps not 1,000 games, but 10,000, 100,000. It should work out that you draw that one-off card about 2% of the time. So I think just weighing up the pros and cons of thinking about the possibility, the chance of drawing cards, and like I said, think of every card in your deck as 2% of your deck. So going back to one of the earlier points, if you're mulliganing for one of those silver bullets, you've put 3 of them from your side deck into your main deck. That equates to 6% of your deck. The percentages change for however many you mulligan, but so for example, if you put back all 6 because you're trying to hard mulligan, each time you draw a card, you've got a 6% chance of drawing it. The percentage slightly increases every time you don't draw one. So it's kind of 6% plus 6% plus 6%, etc. So thinking about the percentages of drawing cards, each card is worth 2%. And then what I'm going to do in the later videos is I will be able to go over the percentages a lot more, because it really does come into predicting what your opponent's got, and thinking about combo power as well. So thinking about percentages of your opponent having cards is something that I'm going to go into in more detail. But like I said, that does depend on the amount of likes or subscriptions that we get. So I'm going to leave it there for today, but do remember to like and subscribe for us. When we hit the target, we'll be bringing out the second video of Get Good. But thanks for watching today. Hope you have a nice day.